don't have the fear of failure, because there's always going to be times where it's not failure, it's times where you make mistakes. And the people who do best are the people who reflect on their mistakes and address their actions so they don't do that mistake again. And by continuously putting yourself out of your comfort zone and learning from whatever errors you make and taking up all the opportunities, it will constantly put you in better stead.
Most young people leave education with qualifications but little clarity about how to get hired or build something of their own. This is Future Careers Made Clear. Practical conversations about how early careers actually take shape. Hi, I'd like to welcome you back to Future Careers Made Clear. And our guest today is Owais. Owais, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone. As mentioned, I'm Owais. I'm a 19-year-old consulting degree apprentice and currently co-founding Fledglings, and delighted to be on this podcast.
Great, thank you for coming. So thinking back a little bit, I mean, you've achieved obviously a huge amount, but since you're only 19, you've achieved loads. We're going to hear a lot more about it, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, so I guess my journey really started through the Young Enterprise Program. I think as I finished my GCSEs, I was thinking about my future career prospects and what I wanted to do as I was going into year 12, because you're picking your A levels, whether you want to do A levels, B techs, whatever you desire to do. And it's just thinking about why I'm actually doing these courses and what I want to do. Is it an apprenticeship, is it university, or maybe a gap year? And through that, I kind of narrowed it down more towards liking practical skills. And that was ignited through the Young Enterprise Program. So I did that at the start of year 12. Interestingly, I had no idea about it. I had a mate who said to me, I've seen this extracurricular thing. Do you want to come along and test it out with me? Have a shot at it? And I said yes blindly. And it was the biggest blessing in disguise. That's how I describe it. So for the viewers, if anyone doesn't know about the Young Enterprise Company program, to give a brief summary of it, is essentially it's a year program. Typically it's done when you're in year 12, about 16, 17. And essentially Young Enterprise provide you the learning content, the facilities and the events to essentially create your own business, create your own product, and sell it to the public, and also be judged in a competition to see kind of the mission, purpose, and how good kind of business experts think your business is. And it's judged through a company report, an interview, and then a presentation. And through that, I just realized, I know we're going to touch on it later on, the soft skills that I developed and everything I was learning as I was going through the program, you could describe it similarly as on the job. I realized that I always wanted to do an apprenticeship, and I had a massive passion for education because our business was about Monito, which is about financial literacy. And financial literacy was a thing that we all felt commonly we weren't taught within the education system, and we thought we really needed it. So we kind of reversed the script and thought, we're still in education, but let's do something about it for the younger generation so they feel prepared. And through that, it ignited a massive passion, and hence why I've co-founded Fledglings now, which is all around building practical skills for the next generation. But
Fantastic.
let's get back to the
Yeah.
questions without rambling on.
No, it's really, really interesting. Can I just kind of reversing slightly on the young enterprise, because I know not everyone will know much about it. So did they actually teach you business skills? Did they teach you how to go through and set up a business and do marketing and financial planning and things? How does it work?
Yeah, so with the Young Enterprise Program, there's the competition side of it, but then as you're going through the competition, there's certain, they call it milestones that you have to complete. For example, obviously at the start, it's setting up your company they have this company portal walking you through the key steps. But then as you go through, you're required to obviously do like financial reporting on where your profits are coming in from, how many sales you've made, and because that all comes to fruition in the company report. So they have set milestones to kind of guide you through that process of running a company, but also learning them key skills that you need.
Right, thank you. And so some people think of it as just a competition. It sounds like it's a lot more than a competition. It sounds like it's laid the groundwork for what you're doing today. Is that correct?
Yes, most definitely. The Young Enterprise Program, typically with our team and typically what some of the other teams is about, you typically have between 5 to around 15 individuals within your team. It varies across different schools and how many people volunteer to do it. But what I found through it is when I went into the program at the start, I was very much like I didn't know everyone who was in the team. I was very much going into it very naively, underestimating all the key skills you needed. And we did votes on our various different roles. So there's one like head of finance, who did everything around the finance and marketing. And then there was an overall leader. And there's an interesting story behind this. I had a lot of work experience from the summer. And I thought ultimately I've got loads of experience here. They're all just going to vote me in to be the leader. And when it came to it, I was very naive about it, underestimated building relationships, getting to know the actual team, what they're interested in, how we're actually going to work together, how can we make this work essentially. And I got to the vote, and to my absolute shock at that time, but it was a very good lesson. They didn't vote me in to kind of lead the team. And what I thought from that, speaking to my friends after just taking a step back, it was very much like I had a lot on paper, but it's all good having a lot of experience on paper. But if you can't prove it and show the soft skills and the skills that you've developed around that, whether that's your teamwork, communication, just being there to support your fellow teammates, then it means nothing. And I slowly learned this. And then in December, they put me in to lead the team from then on. But it's just the tiny things that it taught me, the soft skills, how to sell something to someone, because you're not really taught that at school. Like you're not taught how to sell a product, how to be out there.
No,
It
not
just
at all.
pushes you outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. And so, what was it? It was very interesting hearing you talk about the power of relationships and things you haven't learned at school, because it kind of plays into the agenda that you've got your academic qualifications in the sixth form, but it sounds like you think they're not enough.
In the real world now, especially doing an apprenticeship, I most definitely think they're not enough because what I found when I was at school, and I think it's very common across a lot of people, you stick to your group. You have your group of friends and you're always going to stick with them and you can always rely on them, always speak to them, and you're comfortable within that group. But as you go into the real world beyond school, whether it's university, whether it's going into full-time employment, you have to build these new relationships and they take time, but it also ultimately depends on the way you approach it as well. Not everyone's going to be have loads of similarities with you, but it's just picking them few similarities and kind of speaking and sparking that interest. And then I'd use the example of when I'm in the workplace now, we're always working together on various different projects with various different team members, whether they're in my team or in another team. And it's just always having that, I guess I call it the inquisitive nature, always wanting to ask questions, get to know one another. But also the key thing is remembering them tiny things that they mention, whether it's they love their pet dog, for example, and just them things that can stem conversations.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a lot of emotional intelligence going on.
Yeah, it comes with time and kind of I looked into it quite a bit, but it doesn't come naturally. Like I was never good at I found it horrible, public speaking, for example. But by practicing things and kind of doing things consciously, thinking about them over time, they develop and get better and better.
Yeah, so you've very intentionally built those skills. It's not something that's comfortable.
Yes, and that's part of my apprenticeship. They push things like emotional intelligence because it's the core skills around consulting, they say. So it's kind of the learning side, but then putting that into practice.
Lovely. And we'll come back to your apprenticeship in a little while because I'm very interested to hear about that. But just kind of following on from Young Enterprise, I think you then went on and you've co-founded Fledglings. Can you tell me a bit more about Fledglings?
Yeah, so Fledglings was completely an evolution of Manito. So Manito was more focused on a niche of financial literacy. And I finished my A levels, they were very intense. So Manito was in year 12 when I just started them. And then year 30, I kind of focused on my A levels. And I came straight out in September, went into my apprenticeship. And I kind of sat down and thought, I'm very eager to continue Manito and I always wanted to. But I thought at that time it was very much focused on a niche. and it was towards the younger generation. And I felt to do that and push that, I was very kind of pushing myself down a very narrow road, and I wanted to have more of a larger impact and be within the education space more actively. And I just looked back at my education experience, just sat down and just thought about, if I look back now, what would I have really wished I had? And that's where kind of Fledglings came. So Fledglings has four core curriculum around staying safe online, employability skills, confidence and resilience, and financial literacy. And they're the four core things I fundamentally feel like I should have been taught more at school in a more practical and real world way. So Fledglings is more of an overall impact, focusing on teaching the next generation the core skills they need to thrive in the real world, but not in a boring way. Interactive courses, live webinars, like badges, communities, but also just so schools push this, and also apprenticeship providers, it helps them with their Ofsted regulatory requirements such as personal development and behaviours and attitudes and inclusion.
Fantastic, really good stuff going on. Can you talk to me a little bit about your team? Because when you were talking about young enterprise, you explained how you'd learned about the importance of the team, and I know you've co-founded Fledglings. So what's the team going on there?
So in the young enterprise side, the team was obviously, as I mentioned, it was divided by finance, marketing, but we had massive struggle at the start because I went to a school where it had lots of international students, so we were all from all walks of different backgrounds. So it was very much at the start. Everyone was trying to get the best role possible. Everyone was trying to one up each other, show, oh, I'm doing this, and showing off to the teachers and whatnot. And what we realized going through that is we weren't working together. We were all just trying to one up each other. And then we'd cross paths. We'd repeat things that others have done, just trying to do it better, which was just wasting time. Because at the same time as doing the Young Enterprise Program, you're still studying towards your exams and qualifications that you're doing. And we were just continuously repeating tasks. And at the same time, people weren't asking each other for help when they needed it. People were just trying to get through it. And if they couldn't get through it, it would come to the meeting and they say, oh, I just couldn't do it. And we weren't working as a team. And what I found through that was it was just sitting back. And as I mentioned before, the small talk, the emotional intelligence side is just having them icebreaker tasks at the start. Like one we did was we took everyone to just a cafe and everyone just sat down and we were just talking about kind of what your favorite hobby is, for example, just simple things. So then if people have common sports, for example, that they're interested in, they can stem that conversation. And then through that, it's like building blocks and building them relationships. And then eventually, it came to a time where everyone was helping each other. When someone was more busy, another person was able to pick up, and there was no friction there. And that ultimately led to the success of Manito. But on the other side, for co-founding Fledglings, I was lucky enough to find someone on my network by posting about Manito and the success of it. And luckily founded someone who had a similar interest in me, similar passion and knowledge to co-found Fledglings. But at the same time, you don't just jump into starting a business with someone. You've got to have that common interest firstly. You've got to have that common drive. At the same time, you've got to get along with each other. You've got to be on the same, and I wouldn't call it wavelength, as in the same mutual respect for each other, where you know each other, you know each other's strengths, but at the same time, outside of the business, you get along, you have a good understanding of each other. So it's kind of two separate experiences, because Fledglings is just me and another person. But then when it comes to the young enterprise side, it was a lot larger team. So obviously you've got to remember and build them relationships with various other people. So it was, I think it was a lot more difficult, the young enterprise side.
Great, thank you. And have you had any setbacks at all with Fledglings so far? Has it all gone totally smoothly? I'm guessing probably not, because most businesses don't.
No, I wish it went very smoothly. With every business, as you say, there's always difficulties. What I'd say here is obviously balancing a full-time job and being degree apprenticeship on the learning side, and then Fledglings on top. I've been building Fledglings since September 2024, and we haven't fully launched yet. Hopefully in the coming month or so we will. But the key setback I'd say is just the learning side. So I use the example of the website. So I built the website once, looked back at it and thought, this looks awful. and I just kept going again. So it's just having the time has been the most difficult part. But on the other side of that is just reaching out to various industry experts and just asking for their support, just gaining that confidence to say, "Oh, we've got something here. Let me go try my luck." Ask various different people for their insight and build these relationships, because that is the key part of a business like Fledglings. We need to build them key relationships and speak to people who have common goals to ours.
Right. And how have you found it reaching out, effectively cold calling people? How's that worked?
It's I won't lie here. It's very difficult because so you've got to have that confidence within yourself and the product that you're or the service that you're offering. I haven't been reaching out as more of a service and showing off what we have. It's more been reaching out to say, would you like to support? Can you offer any insight? And just speaking about a common goal, because I find it more comfortable in myself to speak about a passion that I have, because I know I can speak for days about it and show how much I care about this area. And I think with fledglings, on the more salesy side is a thing that I'm constantly kind of watching videos and learning about, because it obviously as an apprentice, in the full-time side, I'm always learning, but obviously with the business as well, you're always learning. That's a common kind of thing between the two. And it's just going to be constantly reading, learning, and just thinking about the best practices to do things.
Right. And so, talking now about your degree apprenticeship. So, when I first came across you, I was just astonished that you were managing the demands of working for a major corporation and studying for a degree and setting up your own business. How is that going?
I'd say it can be chaotic, but I like chaos. I've realized that. Um, it's quite a strange thing that I realized. I realized it when I finished my A levels, and I was in the summer, and I just felt a bit lost because I wasn't really doing lots. I was like, "Oh, what am I actually doing?" But what I'd say about it is, I enjoy it because I'm working to something I'm passionate about, and I'm learning these core skills I need for the future, whether it's soft skills, whether it's technical skills. So in my work, I sit in the restructuring team because I'm on a consulting apprenticeship where I'm fortunate enough where I get to choose various different rotations before I specialize within a consulting division. So I'm in the restructuring team, so I'm learning various different skills, whether it's to do with Power BI or Excel. But on the other side of that, I've got my qualification that I'm doing, which is all around the core skills around management consulting and the core soft skills. As I mentioned before, emotional intelligence is one of them that they kind of walk us through. But on the other side with fledglings, I'd say it's being on top of my calendar. So obviously, if I've got work on with my employer, that takes priority. But then on the other side, I've just got to manage that time. When I have time for fledglings after work, I'm always on it. I'm always watching YouTube videos. How can I improve this? Like I've been learning about doing embedded codes for a website, for example, and just constantly learning, because then whatever skills I have from fledglings, they can help me within my work. But on the other side, whatever skills I develop from work, such as the Excel skills, they can help me with fledglings. So I think it works hand in hand.
Yeah, so you've got a real virtuous circle going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that surprised you about working in consulting so far? Because obviously this is your first quotes proper job.
Yeah, so before this, I had a summer job um, at Coventry Building Society, just a customer service assistant. So it was a big jump, completely different. And working in a big office was a massive surprise to me, because I didn't realize how much how widespread consulting is when I first joined. I selected it because it sounded like the most broad apprenticeship. But when I went into there, the amount of divisions that there were, so you've got stuff like risk, consulting. I was in the strategy group. They've just got big names. You've got data and tech, for example. Like there's so many different remits that you can go into. That was the first thing that surprised me. But on the other side of it as well was when I first went into Big Four. I thought asking questions and not knowing what you were doing was a bad thing, and that they call it imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
where you don't feel like you should be in these calls, you don't feel like you should kind of be there. But as I went on and on, I realized that they're very welcoming. and anyone's happy to answer my questions, which shouldn't have surprised me, but it did because I thought coming in, I just turned 18 when I joined as well. I was like, this is a massive shock to me. But what I said, what I think did me in good stead when I first joined and still does is just having that confidence to ask questions. I love asking questions, and I fundamentally don't think any question is a silly question. So that's what I think's just made me continue building within the consulting industry.
And I think it's, as you say, asking questions is everything because then you learn. And also you're demonstrating that you're keen to learn, which I think is quite important on the
Yeah.
soft skills side. Just thinking about employability skills, what do you think is what's the most key skill that you have, do you think, in terms of your consulting?
I think the most key thing, especially at an early stage, I'd say it down to two things. I'd say it to willingness to learn and the resilience aspect, because I think the resilience aspect in particular is very much downplayed. But if you're going into an apprenticeship straight after school, no matter what apprenticeship it is, you're taking a step into a kind of an element of unknown. You're going into the real world whilst you're going to be studying at the same time. That is a huge benefit in long term, but in the short term, it can feel very because it's very unknown. It can feel very scary and daunting. But what I'd say through kind of experiencing that now and just thinking, reflecting back about when I first joined, is if you just put your hand up to everything, you make yourself known, you you turn up, and you don't constantly think that people are going to judge you for what you're asking or what you're saying, it will put you in such good stead. And on the resilience side, as I mentioned, the imposter syndrome, but it's just having that thought process that they've selected me, they've chosen me for this apprenticeship for a reason. Like, I'm here for a reason. And what I like to think to myself when I feel like that is they're investing in me, they're investing in my journey. So I want to prove myself here. Um, and yeah, it's a tremendous achievement to get an apprenticeship. So I think people underestimate that as well. But I think them two core skills, willingness to learn and the resilience side, I think that have been the most important.
And out of interest, is it just the young enterprise that's put you in such a strong place with your employability skills? Or do you think things further back in your life as well? I know you're quite keen on sport, for example.
Sport, I think, gave me the really, really competitive element. So I'm very, very competitive, but at the same time, equally, if you think more granular about it, definitely like things like the collaboration, teamwork side, because a lot of the time in sport, you're relying upon each other and you're building that relationship as a team. But then on the other side, I'd say the work experience side as well. So I was a young professionals ambassador. Young Professionals is basically a company that facilitates work experience for big corporates. And through that, attending all them events, obviously you meet a range of different people, but you want to ask them questions as well. What I found through them is a lot of people go there, rightly so, and be inquisitive, trying to give the best representation of themselves, just as there's a tiny chance that that person from that company remembers them and kind of gives them a boost when they do the application. And I think through meeting these various different people, because I remember when I was 16, it was the most daunting thing going to these work experiences, also these young enterprise programs, because the main thing that was the biggest challenge for me was meeting new people, just thinking about how I'm going to introduce myself, how am I going to build that relationship. But as I said, I think it was a combination of everything, right? I don't think anything was more heavier weighted than anything else, but it was fundamentally putting myself outside of my comfort zone in the skills that I knew that I lacked. And that's
And
how I
repeatedly
essentially
as well as both
developed
at
them.
it.
Yeah, it's like public speaking now as well. Um, if I didn't do it for the Young Enterprise program, if they didn't give me the opportunities afterwards and doing various other competitions in school, I wouldn't be as comfortable as I am. But there's always room to develop with things. So
Brilliant. And you've talked about resilience a lot already. What do you think resilience looks like in practice for someone who's new to work?
I think it can have very different interpretations for various people. But for myself, resilience in practice in the workplace when I first joined, I think it was more. when someone's saying something to you, because when you first join, there's a lot of big words around. There's a lot of complex tasks. Like the first ever piece of work I did was around a full financial controls review for a company. And obviously there's a lot of big words around finance, various different roles. And it's just having that kind of mindset where I'm gonna look at this, I'm gonna take this approach, I'm gonna be open-minded, I'm gonna constantly have a look on Google and whatnot, to check what these things mean. But at the same time, I'm not scared to ask questions. I'm not scared to put my hand up and say, I'm not sure about this. Can you help me? Because I think there's two sides to resilience. There's the side of being open to saying, look, I need help here. That's not a bad thing. You've already had a look into it and you've already checked for yourself, but you need additional support. That's perfectly fine. But then the other side you get with the resilience side is the more extreme side. I used to do this a lot, where you think it's a flaw to ask a question about something you're unsure. So what you'll naturally do is you'll work really, really hard to figure something out instead of asking for that support where you could kind of get that one-to-one support with a manager, for example, who knows a lot more. And I think with the resilience, it's just being persistent. If your question isn't getting answered or you're struggling with something, reaching out to other people, doing your own research. And I think that's the key thing, because resilience can get muddled with not asking questions, not being wanted to be shown as, they describe it as weak. I don't believe that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's two aspects to it, I think.
Thank you. And I'm interested, you haven't mentioned adaptability at all. You got any reflections on that?
I haven't mentioned it, but it's definitely a thing that I'd say I wouldn't say I overlook. I've just never really thought about it because I feel like I naturally do it. As I said before, it was more skills that I focused on where I knew I had a weakness. But in terms of adaptability, you're kind of doing that every day, really. Whether you're in the workplace or I'm having conversations about fledglings or I'm speaking to yourself, I'm adapting to different scenarios. And one thing I will say about adaptability is never judge a book by its cover. That's one thing that I've always stood by. And the other one is if you don't ask, you don't get. So in these scenarios, everyone has something to offer, so never write someone off. And that's always the attitude that I've gone in with. And I've always loved to have fresh conversations with people. So it's never as such been a difficulty for me as such. Even if someone on the other side isn't really reciprocating that, it's just thinking in a way where at least I've had an open mind to this. At least I've had the conversation. So if the opportunity was there, at least I've explored it. So that's the approach that I take.
That's interesting. And how would you go about teaching adaptability within fledglings, for example? I'm struggling to think how you would teach it.
I think it's an interesting topic because we do have a module on this, but we do it more from an inner self-belief. Because if you have that, the way I think of it is, if you have that confidence within yourself, you have that willingness, you have that resilience, but at the same time, you have the confidence to speak out to other people. Once you develop that within yourself, everything can be built around that. Because what I feel like's lacking in the current generation, as in what's being taught, is around that inner confidence, having that confidence in your own abilities, whether it's interviews showing off the various skills you have, or it's within a group project or within the workplace. And once you have that inner confidence, resilience, and willingness to be open and not judge a book by its cover, then it's just building them kind of soft interpersonal skills and stemming off them conversations, whether it's as I mentioned before, the emotional intelligence side, but on the other side of that, just as simple as keeping a conversation flowing, because some people can find that difficult because especially my friends, there's that's common phrase of oh, that's really awkward, or no, I don't want to do that because it's going to be really awkward.
Yeah.
It's forgetting about whether you think it's going to be awkward or not, because it doesn't matter as such, because at least you're trying, at least you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, because you'll think a couple of the conversation are awkward at the start, but then once you get more comfortable, then you won't think that, because I think a lot of people's natural reaction is when they do something for the first time, instantly they think, oh, that was awful, I'm not doing that again. But it's just having that, they call it a growth mindset. So just believing that you can do something.
Yeah, I always think feel the fear and do it anyway, really.
Yeah.
That's definitely a good thing. Um, what do you think makes someone really good to work with, regardless of their age?
Think in terms of someone good to work with, I had a really good think about this when I was in the rotation period of my workplace and the ideal person that I'd want to work with. And I think the main thing for me is being approachable, not being someone where you think you can't speak to them, you can't drop them a message. I think the core thing I'd say is being approachable. Listening skills are key, especially in the workplace, but at the same time, being a team player, because in the workplace you can see, especially in more high grades, sometimes you have people at the same grade who are obviously trying to get promotions or whatnot, and they're just trying to one up each other, as in terms of quality of work and showing the visibility of what they're doing. But I had a particular manager of my previous team that I was in who was amazing to me. Always approachable. I could always drop him a message and he'd always have time for me, drop me a call and explain everything for me. But at the same time, say if he had a really tight deadline and I had availability, I'd always chip in and always offer my help no matter what. But he'd do the same for me. So it's just being that team player and just thinking we're working for the same firm, and we're in this together. We can just help each other.
Yeah, so you're growing together.
Yeah.
And so, how's your understanding of leadership developed over time? Because it sounds like you had kind of a bumpy start at the beginning of the young enterprise. So, how's your
Yeah.
understanding developed?
I'm very open about my bumpy start because I think leadership shouldn't be judged on someone's experience. That's what I've fundamentally learned. Someone can look really good on paper and have an amazing CV, but as a leader, it's a completely different thing because it's not fundamentally about your experience. I think what I realized through the leadership opportunities I've had is not everything, as I mentioned, is about the experience, but on the other side, it's about dedicating that time. If you're not going to have that time and not be someone who's approachable and people can have a conversation to and echo whether they have concerns or they have anything they want to speak about, then it's not really being a leader. Then it's kind of more so people feel like they have to tread around you, and you don't want that. You want an inclusive environment. Ultimately, the best leaders who get the best ideas from their employees are fundamentally creating that inclusive environment where everyone's sharing their opinions, voicing where they think we can improve, where the downfalls are, because that's when you're going to know where resources need to be focused towards. So I think the key thing I've learned, especially for the young enterprise side, is just dedicating time, building them relationships, but at the same time, having them support metrics in place and just being approachable
Yeah,
and not
you
someone who's speaking from the top
yes.
down.
I think you've spoken through the whole discussion really passionately about the importance of people and treating people like people.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
In terms of the people side, it's massive, right? Because everyone everyone has to work. But sometimes people are struggling. Obviously, doing a 9 to 5, for example, it can be quite draining, and there's going to be days where you're not going to be wanting to work. But if you create that environment in the workplace where people can have that supportive nature, they get along with their peers, and everyone's uplifting each other, then it just works towards a common goal and there's a lot more cohesion. I don't really like a lot of tension and whatnot. We want to work towards a common goal that we're all passionate towards.
Fantastic. I think that's a great place to kind of end our main discussion. I've got just a couple of questions to ask you to finish off. I think my first one, which is really fundamental, is what one piece of advice would you give to a young person who's thinking about, about to step out of school and about to step into the workplace? What would your kind of one thing be?
My one piece of advice would be go in with it with a growth mindset and a willingness to learn. Firstly, it's for two things, actually. The first thing is they've chosen you for a reason, especially if you're going to the workplace, or even a university, for example. They've chosen you for a reason. They see value in you. They see that you have that willingness to learn. You have that them core skills that they want in a an employee or student. So if they've invested in you, what's holding back your inner beliefs and inner constraints around your confidence and whatnot? So embrace that and put your hand up for as many opportunities as you can whilst you're young. That's one thing that I look back and think, yeah, I did that quite well. Is putting your hand up for things and just putting yourself out there, because when you're young, you can try various different things. You can make the mistakes early. That's what I found. Make the mistakes early, and then instead of just dwelling on the mistakes, strip them back and turn them into kind of constructive criticism as such, where you can think about the bad things you did and improve on them. That's the key piece of advice I'd give, because if we look now, youth unemployment sitting about, I think the last time I checked, it's like 15.3% in the recent stats. And it seems like a scary world, right? But with the evolution of AI and things, there's always an opportunity in everything. With AI, getting ahead of the curve, understanding it, there's also business opportunities aside from that. And if we look at recent stats now, youth entrepreneurship is on the up. The youth are looking more towards the entrepreneurship side alongside the 9 to 5 and jobs. So it's just having that willingness to learn and just putting yourself out there and being resilient, because there will always be an opportunity that comes. You've just got to be patient sometimes.
That's brilliant. And I think the thing is, it's this whole thing about you're young, you've got nothing to lose. Why, it's the best possible. Yeah, I'm obviously a little older, and I can tell you, you're absolutely right. You've got nothing to lose when you're younger. So why not? Why would you not try
Yeah, I
to?
think you've got to start early, right? Because if you think about it, when you progress older, you get more and more responsibilities. And whilst you don't have the responsibilities, it's the best time to try things. Like you're always gonna don't have the fear of failure, because there's always going to be times where it's not failure, it's times where you make mistakes. And the people who do best are the people who reflect on their mistakes and address their actions so they don't do that mistake again. And by continuously putting yourself out of your comfort zone and learning from whatever errors you make and taking up all the opportunities, it will constantly put you in better stead, whether that's developing these key skills you want to, or whether it's to do with business.
And the thing is, with all of this, all these things you're learning, they just compound and compound. By the time
Exactly.
I mean, by the time you're 30, you'll be laughing,
Hopefully.
hopefully. And so, what big decision has most shaped your career so far, would you say? What's been the biggest thing?
Biggest decision was probably taking the leap by not doing the conventional university route, because I look back to my schooling time and it was very much looked down upon if you were doing if you weren't doing a university degree, and it was more the apprenticeship route was kind of just something that wasn't really discussed, wasn't really looked into. But the Young Enterprise program definitely ignited that, where I realized I'm an on-the-job learner and practical skills. And I just thought I'm going to take the leap here. It was an element of unknown because obviously there wasn't a lot of people I could speak to around it, especially in my consulting one, because there's only about 20 in the UK right now. Um, but that was probably the best thing I did, and probably the most difficult thing, because a lot of people, all my friends are going to university, and it's that social aspect as well, right? I won't deny that part, because that is a part that you think about, is you're kind of sacrificing that a part of the social life to go to full-time work while studying, whilst you still do have that a bit. Obviously your friends are always around each other at university, but I just look towards the greater good long term, and I just saw on the job learning, and I just saw the disconnect in the education system currently. I was like, let me go into a job, let me experience that and learn at the same time, because I felt that best suited my skills.
Yeah. And just out of interest, what advice would you give to someone who's perhaps, say they're 21 or something, 22, and they're coming to the end of their degree and they're worried about getting into employment? Because obviously that's really problematic at the moment.
Yeah, for graduates right now, it's a very, very difficult climate. And what I'd say is that you don't have to rush into employment. There is various different aspects to it. You don't always have to go for a graduate scheme, for example. But if I was to look in their shoes right now, I would just be thinking about looking about how I can get ahead, whether that is work experience, but on the other side of that, as we've seen now, the massive drive towards AI, and if you think about it now, especially with graduate schemes, it's shifting in a way where graduates are less so doing the groundworks of work at firms. It's more so shifting where AI will do the groundwork, but then what graduates are doing now is reviewing the AI's work. So it would be good to just strip that back and understand how AI works and understand how to use it, but at the same time, how it goes through its thought process and the key prompts, because that is what is happening in the workplace right now. It's not taking jobs, it's changing jobs. It's changing the role of the more junior employees and the work that they're doing. It's turning from a more groundworks into more of a review phased approach. But I'd say as well, just stay resilient. As I said before, if you stay resilient, you keep working on errors you made previously, and you be patient, something will always come. There'll always be an opportunity waiting for you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And then the final question, what's next for you?
What's next? Well, I'd love to say with fledglings, obviously getting that off the ground. My key goal with that is I want to be a fundamental push in the new national curriculum changes. Obviously, we've seen they've been announced for 2028, but I want to be that one to support these schools, academies, or independent training providers, for example, anyone who needs that support around the practical skills that are needed for the next generation, and be that kind of driving force as fledglings who's supporting that, but also we're showing the metrics behind that, proving the impact we're having. So that would be the main one, because fledgling I'm very passionate about, and getting corporate sponsorships in to push the story so we can have more courses on the platform and more like live webinars. So we're essentially a hub for the next generation to prove their and build their real life skills. Which excitingly, I can say on here is we've interestingly got an interview AI and CV AI now, where they can get live feedback from interviews, for example, and on their CV compared to the job description. But I think my only other second goal would be, in terms of my apprenticeship, it would simply be completing and finishing my apprenticeship, because I see the stats around level 7 apprenticeships and about 50% drop off. So my aim is, I've got about 3 years left, is to obviously consistently get a high performance rating, which is basically your metric of how well you've been doing with your clientele work and everything around your job role, but at the same time finishing my level 7 qualification, because it's going to be a difficult path. But obviously, I've got to take everything accordingly, step by step, and not do what I've done very well before and try and get ahead of myself.
And that's great. And it's interesting to hear you reflect just the actual challenge of getting that level 7 apprenticeship done. I've done one myself, and it's hard. But
yeah, I think it's just it's going to be taking manageable steps, but planning ahead is going to be key, I think. And the resilient side, because obviously it's uphill battle, but you've got to think about the value you get once you finish it, and just taking it step by step and just having a look back and just nailing down my revision technique is going to be one of the key things. But you've got to look long term about the gain of getting that level 7 qualification, and not even the relief, I guess the joy and the how proud I'll be once I finish my apprenticeship, because obviously normal people a lot of people just go to university, and going through an apprenticeship, but it can be quite scary at times. So it'd be a proud moment.
yeah, and I've no doubt you'll achieve it. You're a very driven person. I'm very impressed
Fingers
by you.
crossed.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciated talking to you. And just before we finish, I must emphasize that you're speaking obviously not on behalf of your employer, just these are all your own opinions. And we thank you for them.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Future Careers Made Clear. If you'd like practical tools to support what comes next, you can explore the One Big Next app. I'm Sandra Davis. Thanks for listening.